recorded. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of September 22nd. Are there any corrections, additions of those minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? All opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. Okay, we're going to move to the chairperson and executive director's report, which are sort of going to be, I think we'll do together. And I think, Evandro, what we can do is follow your outline and use it as an outline. Evandro and I met, and maybe use that as an outline for both your report, my report, and an update on initiative, because it covers all of it. And the first thing is welcoming new staff. And first, let me say thank you to Susie and to Leonard Lee and to Reyes, all people who took time this summer to interview candidates while Evandro was on leave. So in terms of Roy and Amber, you guys stepped in and filled in, and I appreciate. Susie took a lot of this on, I know, in terms of going over resumes and dealing with the personnel department, and these people are here because she persevered to go through the bureaucracy to get them on board. And the two commissioners actually stepped in to interview people, and I really appreciate all your help. So let me say that before we go ahead. And Evandro, you want to introduce these two, and or they can introduce themselves. I know people met Quincy at the last meeting, or even at the August meeting, met Quincy Roberts, but why don't you introduce the other two?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For members of the public and those viewing, I'm Evandro Cavallo. I am the Executive Director of the Boston Rights Commission. I'm excited to be back. As Madam Chair said, I was on leave for a few months over the summer. However, I will make one minor correction, Madam Chair. I was here for the bulk of the interviews, except for Roy's. And I met Amber over the summer during the interview as well. So I just wanted to make that minor adjustment, but excited nonetheless, and certainly want to thank you all, particularly Madam Chair, Leonard Lee. Ray has been instrumental in this, and also certainly Susan, not only through all of you and the kudos that you've given to Susan, but I can tell you certainly coming back and hearing from other team members, other departments, folks are certainly very impressed with the work that Susan continues to do. I see also Natasha White from the Office of Equity here, Chief of Staff. She's also was very helpful in getting us, with the hires over the summer. But needless to say, certainly we are very excited because, as I said in my report to you all that I wrote, the capacity has been an issue for us, particularly having had two individuals working for the commission for the past at least almost 2 years now. We're finally at five full-time employees, which you met Quincy Roberts, who's the Education Outreach Manager. He came on, I believe, in August. Amber Garcia Gonzalez is the investigator. She came on in September. And finally, Roy Water is the Director of Research and Analysis. He came on board last month. And both individuals are very dynamic individuals who came actually from other parts of the city. Both worked at the Boston Public Health Commission. Very dynamic individuals. And I'll let them, again, say a few words, introduce themselves, and we'll go, as Madam Chair said, more or less through, some of the other important areas of the report that I gave you. So without further ado, I'll ask Amber, since she came on first, to introduce herself briefly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction, Evandro. Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Garcia Gonzalez, and I am the new investigator for the Boston Human Rights Commission. I previously worked at the Boston Public Health Commission as a paralegal working on employment matters, labor and employment. And I'm really excited to join the team. I'm excited for this first public hearing and looking forward to the work that we're going to do together. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Welcome.
Roy?
Thank you, Evandro. So, just like Amber, I come from the Boston Public Health Commission, where I did research in health inequity, such as COVID-19, racial differences in COVID mortality. So I look forward to working with everybody at the Human Rights Commission as a Director of Research and Analysis. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you,
to have
Margaret.
you. Very much glad to have you. Yes.
Glad to be
Madam
here.
Chair, I also want to give a quick shout out to Chief Selena Barrows Milner, who's the Chief of Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. She's also with us today. And again, her and her team, Natasha and others, certainly been instrumental in helping us through the summer and continue to be supportive of the commission's work. So when I saw that she's here as well, I wanted to give her a quick update, a quick shout, if you will. May I go into some of the next other things, Miss?
Yeah. Why don't we talk about the in-text inquiries?
Sure.
Yeah, we have the information, but why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Thank you. Obviously, as you know, over the summer, actually in the spring, May 2021, we finally were able to, get an intake form as well as an anonymous incident report form on our website. And from there, I would say certainly that we had an increase of traffic in terms of increase, so-called complaints, if you will, from individuals, in the city of Boston, complaining about various, incidents that happened with them. There were a total of 16 that we collected, including 2 anonymous, which came through the anonymous incident report, which obviously we don't know what the individuals are. But this, if you don't remember correctly, anonymous incident report primarily came, at least the genesis of it was through early in the spring, where we did some work around the anti-AAPI community, or Asian American Pacific Islanders community in the city of Boston, with the uptick of violence against them in particular. We met with the community leaders and created this incident, anonymous incident report, which is on our website. So we had 16 inquiries, as I said, 5 of which were employment-based. As you know, our ordinance is broken down into several sort of sectors, if you will. One, employment, and so there were 5 of those. There were 9 were public accommodation. 1 was housing related, and the final one is related to education, which was 1 as well. You can see, again, all of this, hopefully you had a chance to look at the report. All of this is detailed in the report. Most of the cases, incidents involve race-based discrimination, if you will. Some also age as well as sex. We certainly are seeing a lot of traffic, if you will, in terms of sex, gender identity or expression. Also 3, religion, 3, national origin, 1, disability, and 1, source of income, which I think the source income is tagged to the housing one. As I noted in the report, the individuals are able to check more than 1 box, if you will, in terms of the basis of which they believe they were discriminated against. So that's all. I'm happy to sort of have a further discussion. I just had a discussion actually with Amber, investigated about some of these cases, and she's been, to be honest, she's been very helpful on those as well.
So Amber, I talked to Evandro yesterday about this, but Amber, would you tell the commission, the public, what happens to these when they come in, and what you do with them?
Sure, absolutely. So when a constituent files an intake form, there are various options of how to contact our commission. They can walk in call me on my cell phone or complete an intake online. We have the anonymous intake form, and we also have the intake form. Once we receive the information, I send out an introductory email, as I like to call it, just introducing myself. I'm thanking the constituent for filing a complaint with our office and asking to schedule a time to meet. Once they respond, we get a time on the calendar. I also offer video or phone access. Once we conduct the intake via those methods, then I type up my notes and I try to brainstorm with my team and our resources, how we can better assist this constituent with their issue, whether it is referring them to the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination or other resources. So that's really how I handle them. Sometimes we get creative and I might look for other resources. For example, I can call up an agency and gather a little bit more information if I need to. But more or less, I connect with them, see how I can better assist them, refer them out, and then I follow up as well to make sure that that my information was relevant, helpful, that it's actually what they were looking for. So that's my method so far.
Thank you. And are the
Absolutely.
two anonymous inquiries, are they discrimination complaints? Are they harassment? Are they on the web as harassment incidents?
I believe one is about a harassment issue ongoing, and the other, I would have to recheck the tracking database because I wouldn't want to give wrong information, but I think it might be discrimination.
Yeah. And speaking, there were two, if I remember correctly, you said there were two filed under the harassment on the web that we put up originally under the Asian American when that was going on last spring. We said put it, give an opportunity on the web for anyone who's being harassed in terms of something that didn't rise to a police criminal complaint or people didn't want to go to the complaint. And I think we've only gotten two so far. Is that right? Am I right, Susan?
Yes, and those are the two that are Amber's referring to.
I see. Okay. And I suggested that what we might want to do is put on the website, the city's website, in terms of the one you go to in front, when you first go to the city's website, put up, if people are looking where they can go to file a complaint or an incident of harassment, that we put up our information so they know where to go, because that's not yet on the city website. It has a lot of other things where you can go, but we should put our information up on the entry page, the landing page for the city. Okay, Evandro, I think we should skip the next issue for now in terms of the funding and move to the LGBTQ plus initiative.
Okay. And okay, thank you. 1 second here. So in this space, I think, to be honest, particularly after Quincy came on over the summer, I think we've done, tremendous amount of work. As you remember, while I was still here, we began, this would have been summertime, particularly July, even June, and perhaps even May, we began to gather, city departments as well as some outside partners to talk about how city can better offer services to the LGBTQ plus community. This was particularly due to the fact that a transgender woman was killed in the city of Boston, in Dorchester in particular, in May, Miss D'Alto. From there, particularly when Quincy came on board, we were able to create this initiative that we're calling Beyond Pride Initiative, which again, led by Quincy and Susan. We were able to, to do many things to engage the community, LGBTQ plus community, particularly doing 3 focus groups, development and distributing a sort of LGBTQ plus frequently asked questions sheets, which I shared with you all actually via email as well. They also did a couple site visits to the Family Justice Center, which is, part of the Boston Police Department, as well as Roxbury Youth Works, which has a program there, I believe, that deals with transgender youth. They also created a survey which has spread widely, to be honest, and over 350 people responded, and they've done some analysis and produced some results, and done a few presentations to talk about, some of the things that they're seeing, and we're, I think, well on our way, as I indicated in the report, to use this as a model to continue to explore some of the other issues, including the Black Men and Black Men Initiative, as well as the AAPI community in relation to immigrants in the city of Boston. So again, all of this is detailed in the report that I gave to you, but happy to particularly discuss further in terms of if you have any questions. We also involved BPD thoroughly, particularly with Deputy Superintendent Richard Dayhill, who was their LGBTQ plus liaison, and he was instrumental in getting this off the ground. And I'm very proud of the work that, as I mentioned, particularly Susan and Quincy has led in this effort. So I'll leave it at that. Happy to take questions and comments in this space, but tremendous work. Kudos to them for continuing this work.
Anne, you had Commissioner Russo, you had a question.
Yes, so thank you for all the hard work on this. I did watch the presentation that you shared, and I just had a couple of questions regarding that. Are we going to be sort of presenting that presentation in other spaces going forward? And if so, will it be sort of fleshed out more and more professionally presented as something that you can take on the road and for any audience?
Great question, Annie. And as you saw, I think in the next steps that I articulated under that initiative, there's certainly the idea is to use this as a model, to present it to other organizations, to take it on the road, if you will. But we certainly, as you indicated, have some work to do to perhaps tighten things up. And I think one of the things that Chairwoman McKenna mentioned was to continue to collect data, right? So it's not simply not that obviously I think 350 plus is tremendous work, but the more data on this we have, the better. But certainly, this is great question, and a way for us to sort of use this as a model. But it certainly is in this, I wouldn't say initial stages, but it's still growing and still developing itself.
And then the other question I had at the end of the presentation, there in your report, there's a recommendation for the new administration to create an LGBTQ plus affairs office. Does that recommendation have to come from the Human Rights Commission? And if so, do we have to vote on putting forth that recommendation?
Great question. Great question. Not sure how to answer it, to be honest. But yeah, certainly. I mean, I think anytime we.
Evandra, you muted yourself.
I muted myself. Apologies. Where I have the next steps here, Commissioner Annie, these certainly are suggestions and are action steps, if you will. But we're exactly what we're doing now is we're anticipating, which is discuss what the next steps are with each initiative, and certainly the funding, so we can decide together. And certainly this should be up for a vote. I will say, particularly with this issue, though, in terms of the LGBTQ plus office, even during the campaign, this is something that certainly Mayor Wu was starting to talk about. So it's to some extent, it wouldn't be brand new in a sense, in terms of us putting this on their radar, if you will.
So what I would suggest is that at the next meeting, come to the board, to the commission, with a proposal for us to vote on, a little maybe broader than just a suggestion, sort of what it looks like and why, the reasoning why. I think one of the things I heard was, this is one of the things that was mentioned
Correct.
from these surveys as a centralized place to go. So maybe that would be actually more effective in asking or recommending this if we had the reasoning behind it. And also to state that to the commission is one of the reasons you're suggesting this is because what you heard out of the surveys. And if I could go back to the surveys, I think one of the things is that when we talked about this before, is that Roy, you might want to step in here and help folks with the statistics, because the statistics that are mentioned are not valid statistics. They're you know, they're not statistically, they're not random, but maybe you could help folks with a way to explain that. And I see Commissioner Lee has his hand raised as well. So why don't I defer to you for now? Leonard, you have your,
Oh, yeah,
wanna-
I do
Yeah.
have a question. No, first, I just want to make a comment. I think that's great, the work that's been done and stuff. I just wanted to I don't see it anywhere, but because we were talking about the Black men issues and we started out with some stuff, and I just don't want that to get lost
no,
as we move forward. And we have Roy on board, and Roy could do some tremendous work of getting some data in and around the marginalization of Black men, not only in Boston, but in the state and actually in the country, that can help us further the efforts that we began before. I want to try to keep that in the forefront of some of the, as you know, we can't do everything, but I want to keep that in the forefront because we had a tremendous beginning that I think we made a commitment that we were going to go forward with that. And we're having a full assortment of folks, complement of folks on the team now. I think we can really take advantage of that and do some tremendous work.
it's actually next on our agenda, so it's not going to get lost. And one of the things I asked Evandro to do is, at the moment, if you look at his report, it talks about going to using this model for the Asian American community in the spring and for the Black men in the summer. And I suggested that they go back and look at this because the Commission on Black Men that was proposed by the City Council has now become a department. And I suggested that Evandro go talk, they've appointed someone to head that, and see if the timing in terms of scheduling, and especially since, you know, the AAPPI started because of last spring, but, you know, maybe the scheduling in terms of the Black male makes more sense to move up. I don't know, but I think it's something we should look at, Leonard, in terms of what's going on and in terms of the commission starting up. So I'm asking Evandro to come back in January with a schedule after having talked to this new appointee with this new Commission on Black Men, and with Roy there to give us some of the stats that we need to have. And do we want to do that next instead of the Asian American community, at least for the commission to talk about that?
Well, I have some suspect on the new Commission of Black Men because it's so new and it's so political. I think we have an opportunity, as we had that beginning, to continue at that high level because they're going to be trying to catch up to us. And I'm just suspect because of the past history of commissions and things like that coming together under the City Hall roof. And so being the Human Rights Commission, I just think with all the injustices around Black men of color and that the lack of attention and support, I think it becomes really important. And we had a tremendous beginning that I don't want to lose that type of momentum that was developed through the hard work of Susan and Evandro as we go forward. We can deal with all types of things, but I think we've been able to do something solidify some relationships and start to develop something much stronger than anything else going on in the city when you're talking about Black men right now.
And it cuts across everything, health, education,
Everything, work, I mean, the
everything.
violence,
Employment,
the
everything.
racism, I mean,
Yeah.
and you know, as you possibly can imagine, because of that, it has a direct impact on the Black community.
Yeah.
It has a direct impact on Black children, Black girls, Black boys.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah. So Evandro, you're listening, and you know we talked about this a little bit. We'll come back with a schedule in terms of this protocol with LGBT.
Madam Chair, if I will, I
Yeah.
haven't been able to, obviously, we just had a conversation about this yesterday, but
Yeah.
I do think it makes sense, you know, to switch the schedule, if you will. I actually began having conversations internally, particularly with Quincy Roberts, about, you know, how do we start working on the Black males, marginalization of Black men, and plug in sort of the model in that space. So I think, you know, certainly we'll have more to talk about in January about this space, but
Yeah.
we're already aligning, you know, realigning, if you will, in this space.
Okay. I just want to go back to the LGBTQ presentation and be clear about, I think, where I've heard from commissioners that we really appreciate the work that has gone on and the importance of this issue. We also want to see the presentation, both in terms of the statistics and in terms of the, you know, professionalism. And every group is going to need, you know, like if you go to BPS, it's a very different group of presentation in terms of educators. Certainly, if you're even thinking about students, that's a totally different presentation. A presentation to the police is different than you do a presentation to, you know, a city department. So one of the reasons I wanted to wait, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, wanted to wait with the money is, and I think now we're talking about the Black males as well as LGBTQ, is to use that money if we need extra money to have the presentation to suit the different audiences and with the appropriate statistics and the appropriate presentation materials and for any group that we're going to present it to. And until that happens, I think we want to put it on hold until we have done that. And with whatever support we need to have to go forward, Roy can help with the statistics and whatever help we need to support the effort to create presentations that are appropriate for different groups that are going to hear that. Any other comments on? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. You're muted, Reyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to thank Quincy and Susie. I have already talked to Susie. I attended the presentation, and I think that indeed this might be the beginning of a blueprint for for this project and for future projects of the commission. I agree with everything that everybody has says, and want to underline that this is a work that is just starting. It's been just a few months in the making, and it's already, I think, inspiring. And lastly, I want to offer my help. If there's anything that I can do to help, please call on me.
Yeah, I think there were several commissioners who had suggestions about the presentation. We're glad to share those offline directly with Quincy and Evandro, Ann and Reyes that I think are basic, that would be helpful. So Quincy and Susie and Evandro might have an opportunity to talk to them as well, that would strengthen the basic presentation and then think about how to move forward. Does that sort of sum it up for the people who have seen this presentation? I think a number of us have.
Madam Chair, thank you. I guess I'm thinking next steps, perhaps either through email or maybe a meeting with certainly Reyes and Andy and others that may be interested in giving some feedback, so we have some concrete sort of things and have a
Yes.
plan out of it, if you will, how to improve it, what we can do to make it into something that much better.
Yeah, I definitely think that that Anne and Reyes and I had similar responses to the presentation, and
Mhm.
are glad to share them
Okay.
with you and Quincy and Susan. Yeah,
Thank you.
and be helpful in any way we can. So before it goes any farther. So. And I think all of us, Evandro, in terms of the $100,000, would love to see that used to support this effort and to support the Black male effort in terms of using this kind of a protocol in getting the right data and thinking about how we can be most helpful in moving that agenda. And I think that we need probably to think about what that looks like. And I also like to know what is the commission agenda. And as Leonard says, that we don't have to follow that, but I would like to know what it is. But I'd like to know what ours is. I mean, what is our goal here? Our goal for the LGBTQ plus was, and I think we ought to keep that in mind, is what is it the city does or doesn't do that the LGBTQ plus community would like to see changed or added? And I'd like to think about some concrete things that come out of that with Black males too. Are things that the city could or should be doing or shouldn't be doing? And what are they? What are the kinds of things that the city could be doing to make lives of Black men, maybe boys, in the city better? Because we know the status is not very good. So I'd like it in some ways to come out with some recommendations that the city could follow, or at least that we can make to the city. What are those things? In what areas? So, okay. So I think we've covered, Evandro, the first couple of things. Immigrant rights was the next thing on your list.
We, in a roundabout way, we did cover it there as well.
Yeah, we did, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, yeah.
And as far as the next two, obviously Digital Divide being the central one, as well as the Boston Police Department reform initiative. Those, as you know, we have interns, including Talia, who's been working on the Digital Divide. She's going to give a presentation, and as we're discussing here, is to figure out, particularly after the presentation, what do we do next? I know you and I have had conversations, Madam Chair. I know you, as I indicated here, you also presented and testified before the City Council. So I think, ideally, we want to, after her presentation, have, a couple, at least concrete steps in terms of what's next. I know, obviously, we have Roy with us here, and data has been an issue, and particularly in this initiative, to get data on the complex data that we need in this space. So I'll sort of pass that buck to Leah to present, and then again, Lilo will present on the status of the Boston Police Department Reform Task Force recommendations, and that leaves us with a couple other, if you will,
Right.
issues. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I can jump into those
Okay.
briefly and
All right.
then pass
Sure.
the buck to the interns.
Yeah. Okay.
And first and foremost, housing discrimination, as you remember, this is something that we sort of been watching along and working with Fair Housing Commission for the past year. This was particularly after the Suffolk University did a study last summer. Last summer, the 2 summers ago, actually, now that I think about it, indicating that there were a lot of discrimination against voucher holders and Black people who are trying to rent in the city. And since then, Fair Housing, along with the Suffolk University, has sort of been duplicating the test. And as I said here, according to the executive director of the Fair Housing Commission, Will Noha, they've done over 100 of these tests, where essentially they will send, if I remember correctly, they will send, these are sort of like test studies that will send people to do a particular thing, to try to get, an apartment, to try to rent an apartment from a particular company and see what happens. And in those tests, they've had a lot of, incidents of discrimination, and they have been going forward to, either penalize the company, require training and other things. The next step, at least for us, and for us, we were looking to see how we can identify perhaps 1 or 2 or 3 so-called major players or major culprits in this space, to figure out how do we partner with Fair Housing to do further work, and, if you will, for lack of a better explanation, make an example of some, to send a message that this is not allowed in the city. And so the next step in that direction is for me. I'm going to be joining more or less the team, and they have a meeting in January where they're going to discuss the results. I've already discussed with Will a couple organizations and companies that perhaps we might be looking into. So we're still in gathering form, if you will. But once, hopefully, as we turn the year and go into the spring, we should have some data, as we call it, some evidence that we can start digging through to see, okay, these are companies that we can get more information about, that we can go after. So that's where we are with the housing discrimination. But I will say that a lot of work, certainly from the conversation I had with Will, has been happening. Particularly, as you know, Fair Housing focuses primarily in housing discrimination. But happy to answer any questions as well in this space.
So I think this is terrific. And, for people who are not familiar with housing testing, it basically is sending a white person, a Caucasian person or couple to rent an apartment, and then a Black couple, or a Hispanic couple, a Latino couple, and see what happens. I mean, literally test case, or a person with a Section 8 voucher. And that's what's been going on. And you literally test it and see whether or not people are treated differently. And that's what is shown. And I think this is a good example of how we've talked about a pattern and practice rather than individual cases. So they're doing individual cases, and we're looking to see if there's a pattern or practice of discrimination from some large landlords. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to be involved at that level. And there are 1 or 2 landlords who have shown a history and a pattern of this kind of discrimination over a long period of time. So Leonard, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's just so frustrating to hear that we're still dealing with this at the level that we're dealing with. And I remember in college, I was a tester. That's how I made some extra money. And I just want us to realize that this has been going on a long time. People have been working on it for a long time. And so there's a lot of lessons learned that we should really embrace and look at, because there's a reason why it's still happening at the level that it's happening. And it's pretty disgusting. As I'm listening, I'm saying to myself, why am I hearing this again? 59 years old, and I'm hearing it again. I mean, it's just a real tragedy So as we go forward, please, I just want us to be conscious to the fact that it's really important to understand the history, but also trying to figure out how can we really make an impact so that your children, my children, grandchildren don't have to deal with this madness. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm
it-
sorry. It's just,
No, no,
it's pretty-
yeah, no, you know, I'm even come from an era, I think a little before yours, and you know, I was involved in the same thing and forever. And some of these people we're talking about, in terms of large landlords, are the same landlords. So maybe this will really give us, you know, I don't want to be too hopeful, optimistic, but let's see if we can make a difference here. You know, let's see if we can make a difference here. So I think this is an opportunity. So I'm really looking forward to seeing maybe update at the next meeting, Evandro, and certainly some discussion in February.
Mhm.
Now, in order to do this, this is something you really do need statistics and analysis about if you're going to do a pattern, right? This will not just be the Suffolk cases. They'll have to go back and look at some past history. So if you want to make a pattern and practice case, because there will have been individual cases brought against a large landlord in the past, and you really want to go back and investigate, pull out those cases. So Amber may get involved in this as well as Roy. This would sort of involve everybody if we really want to make it work. And I do, as Leonard says, this has been part of Boston's history in several parts of the city that we know, many parts of the city. So I think whatever it takes, we ought to do it well. And the first one has to work, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you went over the health and equities, not much to say, except that Roy's here and he knows all there is to know about them.
That's correct. That's exactly how to read this.
And that we're hoping that when there's time that Roy can give us a suggestion about what he thinks might be an opportunity for the commission to take up.
Yep.
So is that basically?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And we'll leave the last two things. So I want to go back to, why don't we take up the police, the scoreboard first? And Reyes, why don't you introduce?
Okay, so I'm going to introduce them both at the same time, if you don't mind. So it's less obstructive. Lilo Altali and Talia Viveros, who are both doctoral students at UMass Boston in the program of human rights. Talia has been with us for a year. This is her second semester working on broadband equity in Boston. Lilo has been with us for 1 year working on Boston Police Department and the police task force, Boston Task Force. So Lilo's main task this semester was to establish a scorecard of what reforms have been taking place and which either have not been taking place or we cannot find accurate information about it. Talia has been on the second semester of research, establishing contacts with a number of very important national experts on broadband in urban cities or in large cities. And she has also been investigating some of the issues that appear to be taking place in Boston, but not only in Boston. She has also studied quite well Mayor Wu's digital equity plan, and she's put together a series of briefings that are helping the commission, will help the commission understand what the problems are, where the dead bodies are buried. And I think I'm going to let them speak for themselves now.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I can share my screen and start my presentation. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So as the commissioner mentioned, I'm a second-year PhD student at the School of Global Inclusion and Social Development. My first semester with the commission, I am studying policing practices within the context of human rights, and also the Boston Police Task Force reform. And the top 5 recommendations that came out of the Boston Police Task Force, which was put together by Mayor Walsh in 2020 as part of the Obama Foundation, My Brother's Keepers Alliance Pledge. And these were the 5 recommendations that came out of the task force. On your scorecard, you have specifics about each recommendation and sub-recommendations under them and the status of their implementation. But I wanted to run through them really briefly. It's to create an independent Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, OPAT, which happened recently. Formalize and expand PPD's commitment to diversity and inclusion through the creation of a D&I unit. Expand the PPD's adoption of the body-worn camera program and continue the ban on the use of biometric data. Enhance the PPD's use of force policies and adopt practices that maximize accountability, transparency, and public access to Boston Police Department. And most of the data I'm going to be presenting to you today is really focused on the formalizing and expanding of PPD's commitment to diversity and inclusion and the adopting of practices that maximize accountability, transparency, and public access. The first data point that I'd like to bring to your attention is research has shown that a diverse police force representing the population it serves has a lot of benefits. It can mitigate the risk of officer-involved killings, it can reduce group threat, and it just builds better community relationships. And so here's a demographic with the Boston racial demographics of the city of Boston, and then the Boston Police Department demographics. And what you'll notice is white police officers are overrepresented, Black police officers are equally represented, Hispanic and Asian officers are significantly underrepresented in the Boston Police Force. Now, finding data for the Boston Police Department demographics was a challenge, and that will be a theme throughout this presentation. And I was able, the way that the city presents this data as an aggregate, so I couldn't tell who was administrative staff or who was a lieutenant, right? But I did find one memo that was sent from the Boston Police Department to the City Council that had specifically by rank the demographics of police officers, and it was dated May 2020. And so that's the data I'm using here. So these are only sworn police officers of the Boston Police Department. Another aspect of diversity that's often overlooked is females in the force. 13% of the Boston Police Department is female, 87% is male. And as a point of reference, about 52% of the city of Boston identifies as female. And although the research is still in its infancy, there was an interesting research study done where it looked at police teams, and a police team that had one male and one female. The female was less likely to discharge her firearm than the male. And so there's evidence showing that having a female on the force is really important, not only for representation purposes, but also they're less likely to discharge firearm. I also wanted to see where in the ranks are females in the Boston Police Department. And so as you can tell from this graph, they're concentrated at the lowest rank of patrol officers. So 72% are patrol officers, 18% are detectives. And as you climb the ranks, there are less and less females. Another aspect of diversity I wanted to talk about. So we have racial and ethnic, and then gender. And I want to talk a little bit about language. The Boston Police Force did recommend that the dashboards and the data available from the Boston Police Department be translated to languages spoken in the city of Boston. And about 37.7% of Bostonians speak a language other than English at home. And language barriers can hinder community relationships, and especially as we're also talking about accessibility. So thinking beyond, Spanish, Arabic, but also sign language, right? In terms of accessibility. According to that memo dated May 2020, about 8% of sworn officers speak a language other than English. Out of those 8%, 51.4 speak Spanish, 16% speak Cape Verdean Creole, and 10.8% speak Haitian Creole. It would benefit the community relationships if PPD had a more thoughtful approach to cultural and linguistic competency. And I think a good case study for this commission is the Oklahoma City Police Department, which has a bilingual police unit that speaks, that's proficient in Spanish, Vietnamese, and sign language. And they incentivize police officers to become proficient in the languages of the community. And so that's a good case study for the commission. These are legal challenges to the PPD's practices around diversity, inclusion, accountability, and transparency. I don't want to dive deep into each one. I just want to bring two trends to your attention. The first trend is access to records seems to be a real problem with the Boston Police Department, and one of the main reasons that people bring legal challenges or entities bring legal challenges. The other is around discipline and termination of minority officers or female officers. And you can dive deeper into each of these, but I won't do that today just for sake of time. And so as we think of advancing this work and the information we still need to make meaning and to really be able to make strong conclusions, here's the data that I recommend the commission seek out. 5 years of racial, ethnic, and gender demographics of active sworn-in police officers. And I recommend this data by rank and annual salary. And having 5 years will just allow us to see year-by-year trend. And so not seeing that, one isolation, 1 year or a different year, but be able to see the trends in demographics, especially across salaries. The cadet program I know was of interest to some of the commissioners. It's supposed to diversify the police force, and it's supposed to introduce young folks to careers in public safety. There's not much data on this, so if we could access the gender and racial and ethnic demographics, as well as the number of cadets that enter the police academy and retain in the police academy. And then the number of police officers that are required to wear body cameras. So as we go back to the recommendations from the commission recommended that they update the policies around body-worn cameras, and the Boston Police Department did do that. But it would be helpful to know in practice, what does this look like? And so I think one number that can reveal that is the number of police officers that are required to wear body cameras. And then finally, data on PPD spoken languages. I think it would be helpful to know how language proficiency is determined. Is it simply self-reported? Is it tested? How is that determined? Most recent data on language spoken by police officers, I think including sign language, would be helpful. And if we could get this year to year, I think that would be helpful as well. So if we are able to get this data, and maybe Roy has more things to add, but if we're able to get this data, I think we'd be able to make really strong conclusions and really advance the work of the commission. And that is what I have. I'm open. I welcome any questions or thoughts.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
When going back to the 5 years on the demographics of the department, one thing I'd just suggest to look at possibly adding to is the list for promotions is different than actual promotions. And there might be interesting kind of backdooring it to see. Years ago, when I was growing up, I spent 5 years with the department as an Explorer captain, and I always found very interesting. A lot of people on the exams come within 1 or 2 points of each other. And depending if it's a rating versus a promotion, sometimes there's a thing, there used to be a thing, I don't know if it still exists, called commissioner points. And that's where some potential bias may show up a little clearer. And it would be interesting to see if they still do commissioner points and the actual demographics of people who are placed on the promotion list versus those who actually get promotions. And I do know there's been a lot of lawsuits on that and the minutia of it. But that, I think between that and again, keeping in mind the difference between someone who's a civil service rank versus someone who has a rating like a detective, or someone who has a political appointee like a superintendent or deputy versus the civil service. So it is a little bit minutia, but it might be interesting if we can get from the city that type of data to compare who was originally on the list versus who got promotions and see if there's any type of differences we should be concerned about.
That's great, Commissioner. Thank you.
Can you, Leonard, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say a good job. You know, trying to get data from the Boston Police Department is you have a better chance of hitting the lotto. So I have to commend you on what you've been able to take. I've been working with MAMLEO, it's Massachusetts Black Policemen Association, who's taken the Boston Police to court. And I would recommend reaching out to them because they have some data that they had to have forced. They had the Boston Police Department that was forced to give it to them. So that could probably give you a little more than what you've been dealing with, because I know firsthand what you've been able to do. Again, I commend you because I know it's very, very frustrating to deal with folks or public servants, but they act like that's a whole nother story. But no, great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lee.
And I think you had your hand raised as well.
Yes, thank you for doing this work. I was wondering if we could also get the demographic of where the police live, in what neighborhoods in the city. I think that plays into a lot of what happens in the city, and I think it would be very interesting to have that demographic.
So Commissioner Rasu, we can actually get that through the payroll records. So they does have their zip code. So we could do analysis through their payroll records that way, which is public.
Any other questions? Okay, so this is the data you would like to have, Lilo, right? And I've heard a couple other things added. And I guess, why don't you could put this down, we'll put the commissioners up again. What I'm asking the commissioners if you agree, then we will send a letter on behalf of the commission, a formal letter request for this data from the commission. Roy, you wanted to say something.
Yes, this is more like a question for Lilo, right? For future consideration. You said that we are able to get a payroll data. Is that right? So, I think one of the concerns that the Black police officers are not, is it the school academy are not encouraged to go in? So, I was wondering, is it possible that the Black and minority and the female women officers, they are paid less, right? Those kind of analysis we're capable of doing. I mean, there'll be some work because we have to extract the data, but that's doable, right? As opposed to data that's kind of hidden from us, right? So that's the key difference.
Yep. So the earnings report have zip code, the salaries. They don't have race. So we may have difficulty there. And the city does have data for the Boston Police Department as a whole, right? But you can't differentiate between like administrative staff and a lieutenant or superintendent. So the payroll data is great, Roy. I think there'd be limitations when it comes if you wanted to analyze salaries per ethnicity or per race. I don't think you'd be able to do that through the payroll data.
Are people comfortable with us putting a list of this information that we would like to have, plus maybe a few additional things that Roy and Lilo would put together and putting it as a formal request from the commission? Are the commissioners? Yes.
Yes.
Is anybody?
Yes.
Hey, Leonard, that was like a yes. Is there any hesitation on behalf of any commissioners? Should we have a vote to maybe we should? Somebody want to make a
make a motion?
Make a motion.
I second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we have consent. Okay, so we will send a formal letter on behalf of the commission asking for this information. One other piece, just information, is there is a initiative called 30 by 2030, and it is an initiative which is to have 30% of police forces, I mean, to have 30% of, yes, of police forces have 30%, no, have 30% of police forces be women by 2030. And a lot of major forces have signed on, like the New York City. Boston is not one of them. So, and it's interesting because the data has shown that when you get to a critical mass of women on the police force, you know, the data has shown when you use less force, less excessive force, they have fewer complaints. They're perceived by the community as being more honest and compassionate, better outcomes for victims, especially in sexual assault cases, and make fewer discretionary arrests, especially of non-white residents, no matter what their race is. So gender does make a difference and race does make a difference. So so anyway, let's get the data and see what it looks like, or let's ask for the data and see what we get. Okay.
And Lila, if you need a contact over at Memleo, they have some tremendous data that they got through the court. Please reach out to me and I'll make that connect for you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you, Commissioner Lee.
I
Okay.
see Chief Barry has also noted that the diversity office may be able to help. And I literally sit next to Donnie. So Donnie was the chief of diversity for the city. So I'll be able to connect with them, as well as the BPD as a diversity officer. I think, you know, whether, you know, even the letter might be able to be helpful to see the person as well. So they are aware that, you know, we're helping in this space.
Okay. All right, so we're going to now move to equity on digital equity. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to share my presentation. Now you can see it?
Yes.
All good. So good evening, Madam Chairwoman, Executive Director, Commissioners, Commission's team, and dear Boston residents and people from the audience. It is my great pleasure to address you today in my capacity as graduate intern of the Commission to present the research progress on the Digital Equity Project. As mentioned, my name is Thalia. I'm a PhD student at the School for Global Inclusion Social Development at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And this is the second term I've been given the opportunity to be part of the Commission's work, and for which I'm deeply thankful. My appreciation for all the valuable guidance, teachings, and support from Madam Chairwoman and Commissioner Reyes as well. This second half of the year, I was tasked with the research of three specific topics. First, an analysis of the inequities. An analysis of the inequities in access to internet services across neighborhoods in the city of Boston. Second, an analysis of methods for determining the speeds for uploading and downloading in various neighborhoods in the city of Boston. And third, to undertake an analysis of information from internet service providers in Boston to ensure equity across neighborhoods. In order to provide these three analyses, I applied a mixed methods approach. On the one hand, the project conducted a qualitative and spatial analysis, a quantitative and spatial analysis of the data source from the i3 Connectivity Explorer, which is a broadband visualization tool that pulls data from the Federal Communications Commission, the US Census, and other public agencies. On the other hand, the project applied a qualitative analysis, a qualitative methodology, through which it analyzed over 40 publications encompassing scientific and NGO reports. These included, for example, the impact reports of Tech Goes Home, which document this organization's work in Boston. I also conducted expert interviews to the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and the Pew Charitable Trusts. Altogether, this methodology yielded a robust base of information that underpins the findings for each of the 3 research tasks of the project. To be respectful of time, of course, I will briefly mention some highlights of the findings, as more information can be found in the project's final report. So first, regarding the analysis of the inequities in access to internet services across neighborhoods in Boston, as of 2019, over 2,700 households, which equates to 1% of Boston's total number of households, have no broadband service at the standard speed rate, which is 25 megabytes per second download speed. In addition, over 62,000 households, which equates to 20.7% of Boston's total number of households, were underserved, which meant that even when these households had internet access at the standard speed, their market options were limited to only 2 internet service providers. You can see now in the map the location of the census tracts with the highest reported number of households with no internet access. These are located, in Northwest Dorchester, Hyde Park, West Mattapan, Roxbury, and the western side of West Roxbury. Particularly, Roxbury concentrates census tracts experiencing the highest rate of no internet access correlated to low income levels. Currently, A service providers provide broadband access in the city of Boston, but just 4 of them provide speeds above 100 megabytes per second. Given that broadband speed is determined by the type of infrastructure in Boston, high-speed rates are mainly available through Verizon due to its fiber infrastructure. Verizon covers 93.9% of the city census tracts with this type of technology. So according to this Data Visualization Explorer, Comcast's fiber infrastructure covers only 5 block groups in the city of Boston, located, as you can see in the map, in Back Bay, Jamaica Plain, and Beacon Hill. Comcast does not have fiber in Roxbury, neither in Roxbury, Mattapan, nor Dorchester, which are the neighborhoods where the most non-white low-income population live. Now moving on to the second analysis concerning the analysis of methods for determining the speeds for uploading and downloading in various neighborhoods of the city of Boston. It is crucial to test a representative number of homes and internet service providers when measuring a particular neighborhood's average speed rates. Ensuring that samples are representative is essential for getting valid results. Boston has 23 neighborhoods, over 269,000 households, 8 internet service providers, and 4 internet service providers serving speeds above 100 megabytes per second. So a representative sample of a neighborhood's households seek to reflect precisely the characteristics of such a neighborhood, both in terms of the number and attributes of households and internet service providers serving that specific neighborhood. Measurements should include data from various sources, including customers, importantly. So collecting data solely from providers or from the Federal Communications Commission is problematic because broadband companies tack on additional fees to bills, ultimately jacking up the monthly price beyond what's advertised on their website. So for example, Boston's Digital Equity Study proposes to draw information exclusively from providers' websites. So while the proposal will provide some clarity in specific areas of concern, it will not help identify nor understand the systemic issues that restrain the city from achieving digital equity and realizing, of course, related human rights. Only by clearly understanding the underlying disadvantages keeping residents from accessing reliable broadband will policies be better equipped to address the city's digital divide for all in equitable and sustainable ways. So Now I'll move on to third research task pertaining to the analysis of information from internet service providers. The collected data pointed to the significance of the multiple dimensions behind the achievement of digital equity, in each of which internet service providers do play a critical role. These dimensions stretch beyond availability, which refers to infrastructure deployment, to involve also questions of affordability, adoption, broadband speed, and neutrality. So while there's an abundance of raw data and reports at hand regarding internet service providers' involvement in these dimensions, there are very specific matters that are not fully developed by the information that is currently available to the public. So having this information from providers will contribute to better understanding the problem and therefore design more appropriate solutions. Therefore, I am proposing to request the following information to internet service providers across the 4 dimensions. Concerning availability, to ask what broadband speed rates and technology they have available per neighborhood, how many customers they serve per speed tier per neighborhood. Regarding affordability, what are the prices per broadband speed tier, contract type, and additional fees per neighborhood? What's the average price they deal per speed tier per neighborhood, and which formal policies and processes they have in place to offer special accommodations? In terms of adoption, it would be valuable to know which formal policies and processes they do have in place to make services inclusive and respectful of customers' culture. It will also be valuable to know how many complaints are filed by customers per neighborhood and what are they about. Regarding speed and neutrality, which are the target and actual broadband speeds they deliver per neighborhood, and which formal policies and processes they have in place to ensure net neutrality. The analysis, these 3 analyses also drew on lessons learned from places across the US that are further along the line in advancing digital equity. The cities of Seattle in Washington, Columbus, Philadelphia, Detroit, and San Antonio, and the state of California share 5 common strategies. First, they prioritize digital inclusion and digital equity by assigning funding, staff, and enacting a plan with well delineated and clear strategies and goals. Second, digital equity efforts are holistic and comprehensive. They've looked at current state and city regulations to see which of those are inhibiting digital equity. They also ensure that the city has multiple providers in every area. Prices increase whenever there are fewer than 3 internet service providers. 4, they make sure that providers are being good stewards. And 5th, the secret sauce to achieving digital equity is precisely people from the community coming and working together. So there needs to be a space for people to align, coalesce, and work together to serve the residents. So this research trajectory finally has brought us into a very crucial moment. Today, Boston is experiencing a unique and critical juncture where federal programs align with the mayor's willingness to work hand by hand with the city council and the leadership of the Boston Human Rights Commission to close the city's digital gap. So this research has identified some strategies across the mayor of Boston's digital equity plan that are relevant for realizing human rights related to broadband access. These strategies were identified because they are straightforward and implementable in the short term. The mayor's plan encompasses 5 parts. The proposed strategies stretch along the first, the second, and the 4th part. So regarding the first part, which touches upon deliver technology for education and economic opportunity, the proposed strategy is precisely to create a Boston's digital equity and formalize this coalition and human rights coalition. And this coalition needs to adopt and launch its principles and plan. Pertaining to the second part of the plan, which calls for promoting digital justice in city services, the proposed strategy is about creating a technology ethics committee, not only for ensuring ethics in the digital use and deployment, but also that this use respects people's rights. And pertaining to the fourth part, which calls for leveraging transit for mobility and connectivity, the proposal is to identify underserved areas near bus stops and the MBTA subway stations in which free Wi-Fi is to be installed, and analyze whether low-cost mesh networks could expand such Wi-Fi signals towards these communities. So finally, these are my immediate references where the data was drawn from. And I thank you all for your time. I would appreciate questions if there are any among the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great information. And I know you tried to get a lot into a period of time, but you've done a lot of work, and it's very much appreciated. People have questions? I know there's a lot of material in there. I think, yes. Reyes.
Yes, if I may, I think we are in the same situation with Talia's work as we were with Lilo's work. We have reached a point where it is important or necessary for the commission to decide if we are going to continue pushing in this direction. We do need very important data, and that data can only come from the providers. I'm sure in addition to Talia, probably Roy also has some very good input to share with us. But without the data that Talia has delineated and perhaps more, it is not possible to continue in a productive way. So we've advanced very much. I think at this point, it is this commission that is leading this effort. I think that Talia has put it very well, that there is a perfect alignment right now between local needs and will, and also the federal government adding funds. And we have amassed a wealth of information and are ready to go, but we would need for the commission to gather this information, to request this information.
Are there other questions or comments? Actually, at the city council hearing last Monday, they really basically said it's the Human Rights Commission who's leading on this issue. And we appreciate all you've done, which was really nice to be recognized that way. So I think it's true. And so what we're asking is to give you what else is going on. When Mayor Janey asked DoIT to get some information on how to end the equity gap, the digital equity gap in Boston, they put out a contract to a group called CTC. In reviewing that, we don't really believe that the scope of the contract is one which will, in fact, show how to alleviate the equity problem, nor will it even show that there is an equity problem, which we already know there is an equity problem. Their proposal is to put what I call widgets in 24 homes of city employees to show what the different speeds and reliabilities are. Well, 24 homes in Boston, not exactly a random sample of what's going on with equity or anything actually digital in terms of significance. So we argued at the city council meeting that the money would be better spent instead of arguing and finding out if there is a gap, which we all believe there is, we know there is finding ways to close that gap. And the way to confirm it and to figure out how to close it is to get the information from the providers. So I'm asking if the commission is willing to do what we're doing with the police, is to send a letter to the providers asking for this information. That we would send a formal letter to the providers asking for this information. So I think what we're looking for is a motion to do this with the support of the commissioners.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so we will. go
Madam
forward.
Chair, can
Yeah.
we enumerate the providers just for clarity purposes? Obviously, Verizon,
Comcast, Verizon, and are the main providers in Boston.
correct. So, but there's also, what's the small company? The names escape me now. Starry, right?
Starry is not, it has a whole, doesn't have the same
Okay.
system.
Okay, so it's Comcast and Verizon. That's what we
I
talking
think it's really Comcast and
about.
Verizon.
Okay, just
Don't you
want,
think,
yeah.
Talia? I mean, I think it's just Comcast and Verizon for our purposes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, there was an issue raised the other day about why so many of the folks using Essentials, Comcast Essentials, are using cable and not fiber, and no one could answer the question.
Mute.
Oh, somebody muted me. Anyway, which a lot of people want to do from one time to time. Anyway, okay, we'll go ahead and prepare that letter and send it. We are at a time, I want to add a couple of things, is there are 2 commissioner vacancies that we would love to get some of your ideas for. You could send them directly to the mayor, send them to me. I would love to, we will get those 2 commissioners. We have the opportunity to recommend people, so please forward names to me. I would love to, I will talk to the mayor about them. Lastly, we want to set up a regular schedule of meetings at the, so I would like to hear from you. We suggested the 3rd Wednesday. I heard from Reyes that she cannot do Wednesdays. So does the 3rd Tuesday work? Is there anyone that cannot do a Tuesday, the 3rd Tuesday? Speak or forever hold your peace. I don't
Or
see.
Thursday as well.
Hmm?
I said, or Thursday as well.
Could be Thursday, the 3rd Thursday. Is that better for people? Let's say the 3rd Thursday. Okay. All right. So just before we open for the public, at the next meeting, we're going to follow up with information about Quincy's presentation and the update on the different presentations appropriate for different groups and how that's moving along, whether or not it's BPS students or employees, or whether or not it's the police department, and see whatever help Quincy needs in terms of statistics and in terms of whatever professional development, different groups. We're going to find out the schedule for the survey on Black men and a copy of the letter to the police. We'll get a report on housing and where we are, and hopefully we'll get some, and on this letter, a copy of the letter to the Verizon and Comcast. And please remember to think about commissioners. Now we're at that point in the meeting where members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions, provide public comment. To do so, raise your hand or type your question in the chat. Application via Zoom meeting platform, or if you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press 9 or raise your hand, or can send your questions to staff via email at susan.emily@boston.gov. Susan, do we see anyone Or have you
I
seen?
don't see any comments in the chat and I have not received any emails.
Okay. Wait a minute. Are there any other comments from the commissioners? Anything else?
I just want to applaud the entrance for excellent presentations. I'm very proud of you.
You should be. Excellent presentations. I know you had to put a lot of material in a short period of time. Very well done. And not only that, I want to say on behalf of the commission, we appreciate the excellent work you've done for the semester and how helpful you've been to all of us. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else? Any other commissioners want to make any comments? Welcome to the new staff members. And I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Okay, we are
Aye.
adjourned at 6:26. See you in January.
Thank you
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. Enjoy.